Folks, we've got a number of stories to get into today. Again, we will only briefly be touching on stories like, well, the one you're watching here. It's literal hellfire being rained down on the people of Russia's city of Oryol. That's Ukraine's strikes, overnight strikes on, Russia's everything, oil infrastructure, Russia's electrical grid, Russia's petrochemical plants, Russia's ports, on and on. We'll only briefly be covering that. Really, we have to get into really incredible Russian central bank news. We've got a Russian investigative journalism piece out where they've discovered Putin's real family and the families of his entire circle. He interviews 10,000 people over 7 years, really exhaustive piece with a number of absolute bombshells. We've got Russian oil market news, both domestically and on the international front. We've got the Russian economy. We've got an entire region of Russia going bankrupt. On and on it goes here in Kyiv. It's been pretty quiet for the past, I guess, 4 or 5 days, as Russia's probably just stocking up missiles and drones for another attack. Nothing really to report in the past 5 days or so. So let's get into this. Ukraine's overnight strikes on, this is overnight, a literal rain of fire occurred over Russia's city of Oryol as Ukrainian missiles targeted the local power plant. Extensive damage seen at the plant. And as is most often the case, Russian air defense being one of the most reliable allies of the good people of the men and women of Ukraine's armed forces. They just put these Russian air defense units in residential neighborhoods. I mean, they don't care what they hit at all. Here's residents just filming sort of these air defense units just firing right in between apartment buildings. I mean, just no value of life there in Russia at all. Here we go. This was the target. This is the thermal power plant in Russia's region of Oryol, suffering extensive damage. And it wasn't only the thermal power plant that was a target. Russia's ability to wage war continues to be dismantled by Ukrainian armed forces with more overnight strikes on refineries and chemical plants. In Budyonnovsk, Russia, and that's in Stavropol Krai, in the southern sector of the hellish Russian mafia state, drones attacked the Stavrolen gas processing plant. I know you guys love the burning Russian oil infrastructure, probably as much as I do. So I've only got 6 seconds for you today because we're trying not to devote so much time to this stuff because it's happening with such regularity now. It's like, Ukraine's just pretty much hitting anything they want. I don't know if Russia even has air defense anymore. And on to the Russian central bank news, which is really pretty incredible, with the Russian central bank the Russian government deciding that they're going to add a spiraling debt catastrophe along with their catastrophic debt spiral and equally catastrophic economic and budgetary debt spiral. I'll just read you what I wrote. Not satisfied with the speed of Russia's ongoing collapse, the Putin regime decides to add a catastrophic debt spiral to its equally catastrophic economic and budgetary death spiral, with the issuance of worthless Russian government bonds going absolutely parabolic. And the next question is always, who the heck is buying Russian bonds? Well, the answer is nobody is buying Russian government bonds except for the Russian commercial banks that the Russian government, at the point of a gun, is forcing they're forcing these Russian commercial banks to buy these increasingly worthless Russian government bonds, and then they are then taking that cash. The Russian government is then taking that cash and sending it off to North Korean weapons factories and to fund the sending of ballistic missiles into apartment buildings here in Kyiv. Most Russian culture thing ever. This is just the Russian translation of it from the original. This is Russian central bank data. And I started covering this 3 months ago when I first started this channel. And I said, watch out for this chart. And it's become quite the prediction, as really anyone taking a look could see. The orange is, this is 2024. So we are up, I guess, about an 850% increase of Russian sovereign bonds. This is a snake eating its tail, guys, if there ever was one, and it's not going to end well. And on the oil front, that is no better than the situation unfolding now in the bond market. But what's really interesting about this one is how the Russian propaganda matrix is now choosing to try to deflect and hide the real situation. They're printing the news, but jumping through a number of hoops to try to keep the real story from the Russian people The real story that's in this article, and that's clearly what the article is about, is what I wrote here. Price of Russian oil collapses, now selling at negative $20 under Brent, right? The price of Brent's around $63 or 62, I think, today. And so take $20 off of that, and you've got, what, $43 that Russian Urals oil is now trading for. And that is in the article. That is the bulk of the article, as you can see right here. This is screenshots from, this is Kommersant. This is absolutely mainstream as you can get for Russian media, especially for financial media. And they're not hiding it in the article. If you scroll up to the headline is a bit vague. This counts on their own. Well, it's not a totally accurate translation. This is Google Translate. But it's a bit vague on the headline. But then once you get out to the main headline, it's a complete lie. This says that Russian oil is now trading at the highest level in 2025, since the beginning of 2025. This is the main headline from the main page of Kommersant at about 9 a.m. yesterday morning. And then as you get over here, a little more vague headline. So they understand media. This is, the majority of people don't have time to get deep into all sorts of news stories. They browse the headlines. So with this headline, they have just deflected and essentially lied to 80% of the people that will see this page. Another, 20% will get onto this headline. Well, they'll just browse the article, but they will absorb this headline, which is vague, and they've got things to do, and they're not going to dig in too much further. But for some people, they're going to get down into the meat of this, and maybe, 10%? I mean, who knows? Your guess is as good as mine, maybe 5%. So this is how Russian propaganda is working now that the Russian government has minders at all the mainstream media outlets to not so much lie, most often is the case, but to deflect and to hide while still, everything is still under the guise of, no, I mean, we printed it. They did. But this is a catastrophe. The actual story is a catastrophe. This is the result of sanctions and the result of all the things I'm about to go into here. The devils are all here, I wrote. The final piece of the puzzle needed for the collapse of USSR 2.0 is setting up nicely. Hugely unaffordable wars, spiraling domestic economy, economic isolation, and now the big daddy, the oil market. And I just took a screenshot, 4 screenshots from this morning from Bloomberg. Unsellable oil now flooding the planet from several angles. This is just Bloomberg headlines I grabbed. Oil's billion-barrel buildup at sea points to sanctions stress. Just to show you what they're not having a good day here in over there in the Kremlin. Oil's global oversupply shows up most prominently in U.S. market. Surging stockpiles of niche fuels are rewriting oil market math. And oil posts biggest drop since June amid supply glut concerns. That's yesterday's drop of like $3.50 on Brent. This is the current oil market. Oil is the core of the Russian economy, and it's going to be in an absolute state of collapse. The world is flooding with oil. Take a look at this. With over 380 million barrels of Russian oil now floating on the world's oceans in search of buyers that don't want to buy, Russian oil is like kryptonite now, you guys. Nobody wants this stuff. And daily costs now exceeding $100,000 a day for each tanker. Things are not looking good for the core of Russia's economy. Russian oil at sea. The amount of Russian crude on tankers has soared since the end of August to reach almost 390 million barrels by the end of October. So Russia's pulling this oil out of the ground, sending it off into tankers in hopes that someone wants to buy this stuff, and paying a pretty penny in order to store it. $100,000 a day is the going rate for these tankers right now because they're running out of space. And these problems are only really the beginning of the issues that the Russian oil market is now facing. This is in reference to an article that you've again found in Russian media this morning, Kommersant again, I believe. Without massive investment in drilling and exploration technology, the cost of Russia's overall oil production will soon double. Hard to recover reserves accounted for about 2% of total oil production in the year 2005 and 26% in 2024. We predict that figure will rise to 50% by the year 2030. So that's 4 years from now. Russia, this is the biggest oil producing region of Russia. They are saying they're asking for the federal government, thus the benevolent czar, to swoop in and bestow upon them some miraculous new Western technologies. Russia has virtually done no reinvestment They have no access to Western technology, and they are just paying more and more to get a barrel of oil out of the ground all across Russia. It's not just this region. And here is the article itself, if you want to look it up for yourself. Authorities have called on the Federation Council to approve measures to preserve oil production in the Khanty-Mansi Autonomous Okrug. And it just goes into the local officials are asking the government for emergency measures to save them, as is the case with many Russian industries now. Troubles continue mounting for the Putin regime as Romania sets to nationalize Russia's multi-billion euro operations in the country, including exploration fields in the Black Sea. Romania moves to take control of Lukoil assets ahead of U.S. sanctions deadlines. This is in addition to Iraq doing the same thing a few days ago. Multi-billion dollars of Russian oil assets just being taken. As beautiful as it all is. And now Romania is saying that they're going to, it was also Moldova. Moldova, like 3 days ago, announced that they're going to do the same thing. This is all very good news. But what's cool about the Romanian one, it's not just the currently revenue producing Russian oil assets. They are going out into the Black Sea and grabbing all of the in-ground reserves as well, which is, they don't even know how much that really is. But it's definitely multi-billions of dollars worth of oil and gas. The entire Kuzbas region of Russia is going bankrupt, unable to pay workers for months. And this is something I've covered before. This Kuzbas region, that's the coal-producing region of Russia. It's way out here. It's a massive region of Russia, actually, and it's now one of the poorest because their entire economy was coal. What's happening is the price of coal has gone down 48% in the past year. And now the mining of that coal, the production of that coal has also fallen by 50% in the past year. And it's all being stacked up in ports. The ports are full of this stuff. They don't know what to do with it anymore. And mines are closing. They can't pay the workers anymore. And this is a problem that's been going on since last November. I wrote an article about this for a publication last November. And it's just getting worse and worse. They can no longer pay the workers. Wage arrears in Kuzbas coal mines exceed now 500 million rubles. That's doubled in the past 2 months few months since I talked about that here on this channel, I guess about 3 months ago. It's an entire region of Russia that's going bankrupt, and they've been pleading with the federal government to bail them out. Several regions of Russia are now pleading with the federal government to bail them out. Russians' love affair with the war continues to diminish, with 30% now claiming they'd support a relative that signs a military contract to help invade Ukraine, down from 52% just 2 years ago. This is a poll out from Levada. If you're going to watch the Russian poll, it's probably the only one that you can trust a little bit out of Russian media. If a member of your family or someone close to you signed a contract to participate in a special military operation, would you approve or disapprove of such a decision? As you can see, it's down 30%. A year ago, it was 40%. 6 months before that, 47%. A year before that, it was 52%. And it's just gradually coming down as guys are coming home with no arms and legs, and there's fuel lines and economic catastrophe, inflation, on and on. It's just getting worse and worse, especially, these people out in Oriol last night where the sky is just lighting up on a nightly basis, explosions every night. I mean, what do they get out of any of this? They don't get anything. They got some theater at the beginning of the war to feel good about being Russian. As Russia spirals into the economic abyss, public infrastructure continues to collapse all over the country. Today in Novosibirsk, a massive water main explodes, flooding part of the city and cutting off water to thousands of residents. And this is just normal Russian stuff, you guys, but sometimes it's kind of cool. And I mean, I don't even know if they can build buildings that high anymore, but they managed this. I guess that's some progress, right? And this is just more, I don't know whether it's Russian propaganda news or a Russian collapse news. So I put it sort of right in the middle here. Having graduated from attempting to trick the audience by putting a guy in a robot costume, as they did 5 years ago, Russia tonight unveiled its first real robot to the theme of decadent Western 1980s musical hit, Rocky. Things did not go well. And I can't play the soundtrack, of course, but it's... just imagine the theme to Rocky. Oh, first of all, let me paint the picture. All of Russia's tech luminaries are in the audience to witness the spectacular Russian technological marvel. They will now conquer the West with this new robot. And why is it that Russia can't have robots or their own technology or a Tesla or a PayPal? Because when the money sits in a place long enough that was intended for, say, research, or maybe a company had some bank accounts, that money is always stolen, you see. So Russia can't have anything like this. This is normal Russia stuff, you guys. All the tech luminaries were there. And they all filled Instagram today with laughing at Russia's. This is always state-funded, by the way, you guys. This is Russia trying to step out onto the world stage to show that they can compete with the decadent and depraved Western world. Just getting ruined on Instagram today. But you see, this is actually progress, you guys. I know it doesn't look like it, but this is actually a step up from what they did about, what I guess, in 2018, when, I'll just read you what I wrote. When Russian state TV tried to convince the world that a man in a robot suit was the new was Russia's newest technological marvel. And so you don't think I'm making up this stuff, you guys. This is the front page of The Guardian after the scandal broke. High-tech robot at Russian forum turns out to be a man in a suit. Yes, but that wasn't the first time that they unveiled this robot. This robot was at sporting events all over Russia before they brought it out to the West to show everyone that Russia had arrived into the civilized world. And this is one of the stories when it actually broke. And someone, first of all, they found the guy taking off his suit backstage at a sporting event. And see, he was taught to move like a robot and everything. And this was supposed to be a real robot. They actually told the world that this was a real robot and that Russia was ahead in robotics. And this was a big, state-funded, and there's his neck right there. This is when they first started realizing that it was all BS. Anyway, so, man, there he is. I mean, it's just, this is Russia, you guys. As ridiculous and as ridiculous as it all seems, you think we're just making up this stuff, but we're not. This is Russia. But one thing Russia's good at on the technological front is ramping up the oppression on its citizens. After 70% of Russian university students refused to install Putin's new North Korea-style Max Messenger spyware that gives government control of users' phones, Russians will now be forced to verify age when purchasing alcohol. So I guess that'll work, right? I mean, that's something else these Russians are good at. I mean, forcing people to do things. If you want to force university students to do something, then install kiosks at all the stores that with which you have to verify with this FSB software that's now in your phone. And what happens when you install this stuff in your phone, when you search for things such as Ukraine, as we know, there's a kid on trial right now facing like 12 years in prison because he searched for Ukraine-related topics. The FSB still showed up at his house. I covered that like 2 videos ago. Just ramping up the oppression on the servile Russian population. Putin ramps up the oppression, now announcing that he's cutting off the internet next year as it may endanger his fake elections. This is a story out of Gazeta.ru from yesterday morning. The State Duma stated that the RU-net will be disconnected from the global network if there is interference in the 2026 election. So I'm going to translate this from Russian, you guys. This means they're absolutely 100% going to cut off Russians' internet next year. That is a given, and they needed an excuse to blame it on, and it's going to be the elections. They're going to say that that NATO attacked the election, some nonsense like that, and so they have to cut Russians off from internet. It's going to be North Korean style hellhole, that's what they're thinking to do. Putin doesn't understand that Russia's too big to go under that model yet. He will find that when he is on the square, and all sorts of all manners of horrendous things are happening to him, probably in the realm of what happened to Ceausescu at the hands of the angered population that have been crushed under the boot for so long. I would guess that's how this is probably going to go. And so this is something from Ukraine Stratcom noting the same situation. A day after the Russian government announces plans to cut off the internet in 2026, the regime's internet blocking filter, Roskomnadzor, begins a campaign telling Russians how beautiful the world will be after they are denied yet one more piece of technology the free world enjoys. So now it's all about, for the next and running up into the elections, they have to convince the Russian government has to convince the Russians that they no longer need internet, right? And so it shows here, it's translated into English, and this is showing you just sitting in a world of darkness hating. You're scrolling and everything's just, you're out of shape. The sun is far away where the world is dark. And then, whoa, when Wi-Fi is resting and you are finally free and living, you are out. Look, he's even walking with his cat in the park. His cat is walking with him in the park. Another miracle of nature. His coffee is in hand. He's got a book. He's learning to read. All manners of beautiful life are now happening once you learn to live in North Korea. And further on the Russian oppression, Putin's paranoia ramps up to 11, now adding famous Russian actress Yana Troyanova to the list of terrorists and extremists for not sufficiently supporting the war. Prosecutors are asking for a 9-year prison sentence for comments she made in a 2022 interview. She is being charged under a number of statutes, including, in quotes, inciting hatred and, in quotes, humiliating the honor and dignity of Russians. Troyanova left Russia due to persecution by law enforcement because of her opposition views. The gargoyle midget czar's delicate sensibilities are turning Russia into a massive prison. Absolutely, that is exactly what's happening. And here's our old buddy Sikorski, the foreign minister of Poland, just producing these sound bites like this guy is just on fire every day. Poland's foreign minister rightly explains a simple fact to those that question Warsaw's having almost doubled its national defense budget. Austria, France, Spain, Ireland, everyone's, sort of wondering how the heck, why would Poland be so interested in doubling their defense budget? Because they lived under Russians and they know what it means. You don't want to live under Russians. And he said, we would rather eat grass than again become a Russian colony. Well said, Sikorski. And here he is saying it. This is an interview from this morning.
We think that if Putin succeeded in conquering Ukraine, we would be next.
Absolutely.
And it's happened before, which is why we've been spending a solid 2% of GDP on defense for 20 years, and we're now spending 4.7% of GDP.
And the public are fine with that. They understand that and they get that.
It's amusing when my colleague, the finance minister, attends his meetings, his equivalents ask him, how do you manage such a huge... And he says, well, I'd be eviscerated if I didn't. We will eat grass rather than become a Russian colony again.
And there it is, absolutely. I've often thought that Zelensky should just humor the West sometimes by saying, what if I just do a deal with Putin and give him free passage, directly into Poland, or into Romania or Bulgaria. All of a sudden, you'd have Europe getting very, very serious when Ukraine is no longer willing to do all the heavy lifting for the free world. And this is interesting. A group of Russian investigative journalists has been uncovering the real biographies of Putin's circle. Apparently, Putin's father was a drunken moron, stabbing Putin's mom in the face and taking out her eye. And this is a great piece from they interviewed, I guess, like 10,000 people over the course of 7 years, interviewing neighbors of neighbors, relatives of neighbors, people that have fled Russia that can now speak freely, about all of the people in the within the elites of Russia, the people that have stolen the Russian economy, all of its revenue-producing assets, its natural resources. I'll just read you. I just took a little excerpt from this article. I'll show you the full article in a second. It really deserves its own show because it covers not just Putin. It goes into a number of a lot of people that you've heard of. Putin's dad was a bit of a rowdy in his youth, so much so that in a fit of rage, he poked out the president's mom's eye, probably her right one, with a pitchfork. The injury could mean a lifetime of loneliness for her and criminal charges for him, but both problems were solved by marriage and the birth of 3 sons, of whom only the youngest survived. Of course, neither Putin nor his court chroniclers ever mentioned this again, and those who wanted to talk about it were promptly silenced. And this has been the trajectory. This article is, I'll show you the article. You can go look it up for yourself. It's just out yesterday. And it's really, it's an exhaustive piece with just interviews upon interviews upon interviews. And it just goes into really how they crafted Putin's image and how they hid the backgrounds of sort of everyone around him. back in 1999, you could find out pretty much everything. You could find out who his parents were. You could find out, secret children, mistresses. Anyway, just check out the article if you get a chance. It's on project.medie. That's PROEK.MEDIA, Investigative Journalist Group. Don't forget about the good people of Georgia, now into the 345th day of consecutive protests against the Russian-occupied government. As you know, back in November of last year, 2024, the Russians drove the final nail in the coffin of freedom in Georgia. As you can see, this particular protest now has American flags and Ukrainian flags, as they usually do. And all means of Russian culture has descended upon the good people of Georgia, and disappearances, torture, political parties disbanded, everything. The Russian world has arrived to Georgia, and the level of life is deteriorating quick as all the money is being stolen. All the companies, any business that was doing well, all that stuff is now just descending into the Russian-style kleptocracy. But the Georgians are it's a small country, you guys, and the Russians are really helping to keep the people under heel. So these people are brave, and just remember that this is happening, and one day the levee is going to break, and we're going to see some great things out of Georgia. That's all I got for you today, guys. All right, have a good one.